Picture this. I'm standing in a gallery admiring this beautiful Rococo painting when all of a sudden I noticed this man hiding in the rose bushes looking up this young woman's skirt, sicko, and then I noticed this man lurking in the shadows, suspicious. The longer I looked, the more I realized this painting wasn't quite as innocent as it seemed. So what's really going on here? And why is this lady on a swing? Because at first, this setting feels calm and peaceful. There's blooming flowers, whimsical trees, and beautiful statues all around her. Even the soft lighting and green hues contribute to the tranquil atmosphere. But when we notice the young woman on the swing, she's in motion and having fun. Her playful energy makes the stillness of the garden stand out even more. This piece was painted in 1767 by Jean-Honoré Fragonard, a prolific French painter, draftsman, and printmaker, producing over 550 paintings during his career. But despite his commercial success and his status as a leading artist of the Rococo period, Fragonard's work was often criticized as a sign of moral decay and dismissed as little more than a luxury product for the rich, with paintings like this one serving as a clear example of their beliefs. But was all that criticism justified? Let's take a closer look. At the center of the composition, we see a young woman wearing a pink dress that features gathered ruching along the hem and frills of delicate lace at the sleeves. The fabric appears soft and light, catching the air as she's being pushed on the swing. In the 18th century, swinging was a leisure activity popular among the elites that often took place in private garden parks on country estates. These garden parks gave men and women an opportunity to mingle and sometimes slip away into hidden corners unchaperoned. The two men around her echo the same period's fashion. We see them wearing tailored jackets, waistcoats, and breeches. And near the bottom of the composition, an excitable little dog yaps away, while a statue resembling Cupid presses his finger to his lips, urging the dog to exercise just a touch more discretion. But wait, this little dog might actually be onto something, because if we follow his gaze to the young woman on the swing, we see her kicking her shoe, which reveals her legs. So why is she kicking off her shoe? At first, it might seem accidental, like she's just caught up in the moment and having fun. But look closer and you'll see that she's looking down at the man hidden below in the rose bushes. The attention she gives him seems to confirm that she's aware she's being watched, and her intentional movements hint that she's playing along and having fun. But is she really just showing off her legs? Because when we consider women's fashion from the 1760s, they had their own version of underwear. Beneath her dress, petticoats, and stays, women wore what's called a chemise or a shift, a simple dress typically made of linen that was worn directly against the skin to protect the outer garments from sweat and body oils. So with this in mind, it seems she's showing a lot more than just her legs. But something here doesn't quite add up, because if this is just a flirtatious moment between the two of them, then what is he doing here? Well, before we can examine this man's purpose in the scene, you need a little context. While the identity of the patron behind the swing is unknown, we do know the story of how the painting came to be. So we turn to a journal entry from 1767 recorded by French dramatist and songwriter Charles Collet, who described meeting a painter named Gabriel François Doyen, who was the painter originally offered the commission. Doyen recalls the patron asking him to paint, quote, his mistress on a swing that a bishop would push, and to position him in such a way that he would be able to see her legs, even encouraging him to enliven the picture further. Doyen was so unsettled by the request that he refused the commission and passed it on to Fragonard. And staying true to his patron's wishes, Fragonard did enliven the picture further. He included symbols like this statue of Cupid, these dancing maenads, these cherubs riding a dolphin, and this abandoned rake and fallen trellis. At first, they all just look like decorative details meant to fill the scene, but for Fragonard's audience, each element would have carried a much deeper message. Beyond being the god of love, Cupid's presence and shushing gesture suggests secrecy. The dancing maenads, followers of Dionysus, the Greek god of wine and intoxication, suggests a desire to break free from societal constraints and surrender to primal instincts. The cherubs on the dolphin tie back to Venus, the goddess of love, beauty, and fertility, and symbolize the impatient surge of love. And the abandoned rake and fallen trellis remind viewers that, just like nature, love can never be fully controlled or restrained. But Fragonard didn't stop there, because once he accepted the commission, the original idea didn't exactly stay the same. What was meant to be a bishop, Fragonard instead turned into an older man, who historians believe is the young woman's husband. And this idea is further supported by the presence of the small dog yapping at his feet. Dogs were often symbols of fidelity, so his barking feels like an attempt to warn him about the infidelity happening right in front of him. Though his bark doesn't seem to be very effective, judging by his smile that suggests he's completely unaware of what's going on around him. But wait, if this man is her husband, then that makes this man, who's the patron of this piece, her secret lover? And even the composition supports this idea, because when we look at the three figures, they form a triangle. The younger man who she chooses to engage with is on one side, her husband who she doesn't engage with is on the other, and she's suspended on a swing right in the middle of it all. And so when we look at all of these details together, they start to form the narrative that this is a love triangle. But while many dismiss Rococo art as light-hearted or superficial, I'm not buying it. Look closer, and it's clear there's more happening here than just an affair. Because when we consider the reactions from the other characters within the scene, such as the shushing gesture from Cupid, the upset barking from the dog, and the concerned look from the cherubs riding the dolphin, this painting doesn't feel as playful as it once looked. It feels like a room full of witnesses all waiting to see what happens next. And at the center of it all is this young woman who's literally and figuratively caught in the middle facing a choice. Does she choose desire or duty? In a way, she represents anyone who faces a choice between what they truly want and what society expects of them. So now when we take into consideration the main characters in the scene and their audience, it feels like this is no longer just about a love triangle, but it's a commentary on how our personal choices are often shaped and scrutinized by external social pressures and expectations. And Fragonard himself was no stranger to having his choices scrutinized, because after his public debut at the Salon of 1765, Fragonard was praised with an applause rarely seen and regarded by Diderot as France's next important history painter. He was also accepted into the Royal Academy and awarded housing at the Louvre. But this reputation didn't last very long, because instead of taking the respectable career path that many hoped he'd take and deemed him worthy of, Fragonard chose to work with private patrons instead. And because of that decision, it made him an easy target by critics who argued that he'd been driven by greed and corrupted by degenerate patrons. Some even went as far as to claim that his work strayed into moral corruption. So why did Fragonard choose to take this path in the first place, instead of the one that many expected he would take? Well, for that answer, we'll have to go back to his Salon debut. After successfully debuting his painting, the Crown promptly purchased it. However, Fragonard would not receive payment until 8 years later. It seems that even with free housing, government patronage, and the promise of a prestigious career, Fragonard learned early on that he could not fully depend on the government and would need to forge his own path. This experience also seemed to have discouraged him from working on pieces for the Salon, as his final submission was in 1767, only 2 years after he had made his debut. And so, despite the expectations placed on him early in his career, Fragonard made the choice to do things his way and take a more practical path, to work for those that would pay him. And so when we take a step back and look at The Swing, it's easy to see the parallels between the young woman and Fragonard's own life. Fragonard has had to navigate the expectations of society and the realities of making a living as an artist. And so in the end, this painting encourages us to reflect on the choices we make and to question how much of those choices come from following our own hearts and how much are shaped by the expectations placed on us. So let me know in the comments, what would you have done if you were in Fragonard's shoes? Or what choice would you have made if you were the young woman on the swing? That's all for today. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know in the comments if you'd like me to analyze any other paintings by Fragonard, and I'll see you guys next time.